An FNPS member with the Tar Flower chapter since 2005 and leads Tar Flower and neighboring chapters on guided hikes and adventures as a Tar Flower science and field trip chair. Pete has a deep passion for visiting Florida natural areas and educating as many people as possible about the features that are unique to each of our public lands. Pete regularly spends hours each month scouting field trip locations and coordinating the land with land managers to introduce members and guests to his favorite places. Tar Flower would not continue to have wonderful field trips that educate generations about the magic and the vulnerability of our natural areas. Pete is a recipient of the FNPS Silver Palmetto Award for 2022, a well-earned accomplishment for all his dedication to the society and mission. Can I get your help? Pete, you're on. Do you need me to push for you, or are you okay?
What are you asking me now?
To move the slides, do you need me to do that for you, or are you going to do that? Okay, very good.
It's not coming through over Facebook.
Yes.
Watch your step.
Well, first of all, completely ignore that introduction. And next, I think we had the most announcements ever. Everybody takes like 5 seconds to stretch or something. Arms up. Okay. Okay, I need to stretch a little. We can get going now. What you see on the first slide there, right at the top, from physics to ethics to action. This is actually from my notes of what I saw in 2015 when the Paris Accord finally happened. Nations of war. What?
Louder.
For crying out loud.
The slides aren't coming through over Facebook.
The slides are not coming through?
No.
I'm looking for mics. The mic is not. And the mic is
I got this thing right up here.
on. Hold on.
Well, actually, the audio's coming through.
There's the light on.
It is, this is Steve.
Nope.
What? Not working?
And
And can you hear me?
Yeah, we could see and hear you on Facebook,
Let's see.
but the slides aren't coming through.
Okay.
That's not coming through.
Is this coming through?
No.
Because I'm sharing pics.
It's on Zoom.
Zoom.
Okay, let's take this in. In the right mode to actually run it. I'm gonna try this share. After that excitement, as I was saying, what you can see on the right side right there at the top of that slide, from physics to ethics to action, this is what I found from my notes.
2015, when the Paris Accords finally happened, And I thought, well, maybe now finally the nations of the world will get together and take some action and do the things we need to do. Well, that has not happened. Some action has happened, but not nearly enough. Now, we're coming up with the auspices of the party, COP number 30 in Belém, Brazil, that's how they pronounce it. In November, we will come back to that event along the way here because there's some interesting things out there. But right now, a little quick review of what's going on in the world. This is the remains of a ceiling fan that melted this summer in a very serious heat wave in China. Here is a lot of areas in China where they had the problems. This is something
That's a $2,000 donation.
American melted in China. It takes some time. This is the poor guy who had to have water poured on him. And it points out that in 3 different towns scattered around China, they were having the same problem at the same time. And as some person commenting from the Chinese point of view commented here, this indicates a disrupted balance of nature, disorder. Coming back closer to home, we see about the time this was happening, we had tremendous floods in Milwaukee, and you can see indicated there 10 inches of rain, 11 inches of rain. At the same time, that's rather a lot. And so a lot of people had homes and cars flooded. There are some, this is going down to Kentucky. Also this summer, you can see they had a flood there, right up to people's roofs. Switching to another place, this is in Botswana. This is in the southern, I guess, eastern corner of the country, so it's far away. Doesn't even know about the Okavango Delta there, which is the flood every year. That's way up in the northeastern corner of the country. No relation to this. They had about 5 towns in Botswana that flooded at the same time. From rains, and obviously when it floods in your town that way, it's a highly unusual thing. You didn't go to town to expect that to happen. Now, that was just a little review. What I want us to think about is how did we let it get this so bad? Why were we doing so little about it when really we knew the basic facts quite some time ago? So let's think about that, and I'm going to go through some indications of part of how we got this bad. But just don't worry too much about this. This just indicates that in the year 2025, there's COP being in Brazil, happens to be in Brazil this year. If we're not doing enough to solve the continued global warming problem, the countries of the world are supposed to renew and increase their climate action pledges. Now, let us pause for a moment of silence. To go through a timeline all the way up to 2025, I'm going to drop back to 1826. This is when people first began to figure out what was going on. We did not know about this so-called infrared radiation, or much about the spectrum of radiation at that time. But he was able to figure out, along with experiments done by himself and others, that we absorb a certain amount of heat from the sun every day, and we had to eliminate that heat every day. And he could work out that something in the atmosphere slowed down, keep getting back away from us into space, and sort of like a blanket that you put on, which slows down your body heat from getting away from you at night. Thereby you get a little warmer. Jumping to 1859, Tyndall, very famous experiment. He had this fantastic apparatus that you can see there, and he could actually measure these heat rays, as they call them, but we now know a lot more about the infrared. He could measure that. He could fill a long tube with just air or with water vapor or with CO2, and he could actually detect that if the heat radiation was absorbed. Jumping ahead, okay, in the 1860s, the Stefan-Boltzmann law was worked out by obviously two scientists, Stefan and Boltzmann. And make long story short, it enables people to calculate, knowing also the Earth's albedo, now that we can measure the incoming energy from the sun real well. The albedo, well, that just means the part that's reflected. It gets reflected off on from the ice caps. So on the part that's not reflected gets absorbed, and then it goes back out slowly as infrared radiation. And we can figure out that the Earth has to cool to space as if it were a whole lot colder than where we, actually remember we have there on the surface. And you know, doubtless you've heard, as you go up, climb up mountains, it gets colder and colder. Go up Mount Everest, it's very snowy and icy. Of course, we haven't been there, but you would see that on TV. So we know that something in the air is really keeping us much warmer down here on the surface than we would be if all the escaping radiation went straight through down in the obstacles. Jumping ahead to 1896, it was worked out by another scientist that if we doubled the concentration of CO2 that was in the atmosphere at that time, it would change our temperature down here on the surface between 2 and 6 degrees Celsius. Now, taking away from that, this is the year 1900, Easter parade. There were all horses in New York on Fifth Avenue, except for one, which is circled there in red, which was a horseless carriage. Jumping to 1913, no horses. Very fast development of horseless carriages, just to give you an idea, because among other things, and all the arguments that we can't solve our climate problems, the argument that we can't possibly produce new things, we can't possibly change fast enough to do what we need to do. So this is an example of this very rapid change that did happen in our real world in the past. Now, 1859, prior to that, people were doubtful, including scientists. They thought, well, even though we were burning a lot of gasoline, other than coal, somehow the Earth will absorb this extra CO2, the oceans will absorb it or something. We didn't know that we were really increasing the concentration of it in the atmosphere. So the experiment was started to measure the concentration of CO2 in the air on the top of Mauna Loa, and also in a lot of other places. We found out, wow, yes, we are increasing the concentration of CO2 in the air very steadily. starting at 315 all the way up to, it hit a peak of 430 this summer. Which is a very serious increase. And for one more indication of that, this is based on the concentration of CO2 in ice cores. You see, it's been around 280 or thereabouts for a long time before we started boosting it up. And actually, if you go back even further in time, a few more thousand years, it will be lower than 280. It'll get down towards 250. But the main thing is to notice that we are really shooting CO2 concentration up compared to what it always was for thousands of years. Jumping ahead to 1967. This was the time of the very first climate model. And so what about it? What happened next? 1968, the American Petroleum Institute requested and got research based on seeing this climate model. And they were warned that releasing the carbon dioxide from fossil fuels would lead to worldwide environmental change. They worked that out in 68, you know, right after the first climate model in 67. In 1984, well, not that, 1984, but this is a whole bunch of graphs from, I'm about to show you, but these were taken from Exxon's internal papers through the 70s and 80s and 90s, and showing what all the changes that happened. It turns out they're now, which is very active. Those graphs I took out of this paper, for those of you who follow science articles at all. This is published in Science, and you know that you have to be very careful to publish anything negative about a powerful company. But they did the analysis of all of the graphs and internal documents from Exxon, found out Exxon was very accurate. And we look at the last Scientific Center, what they, being Exxon, understood about climate model was just contradicting what they led the public to believe. The rest of that article in Science goes through a lot more of this. Exxon knew, and consequently some of the other fossil fuel companies knew what was happening, and kept on telling the public very different things. Jumping ahead, all right, in the year 2000, we had an important election. Well, of course, all the presidential elections are important. George W. Bush won by a narrow margin. If you were in Florida at the time, you remember the fuss over there. But anyway, Mr. Bush became the president, not Mr. Gore. And then, moving along in our timeline in 2006, well, actually, I think it started doing the documentary. I think actually in 2007, the Doors movie came out, but based on a slideshow that he had already been using for some time. And here you might have thought, wow, this will wake people up. Climate education was defeated. In the USA, the Exxon made a big contribution to the National Association of Science Teachers, and at the same time convinced them that this outdoor or movie stuff would be too controversial for public schools. Now, why in the world should physical reality be too controversial? Well, as I more or less indicated in the previous two slides, the Exxon and the oil companies have been telling people not to believe it for decades. And additionally, they had various conservative foundations and spokespersons who were saying the same thing. And that could easily make it be controversial in the American public. Oh yeah. And in England there was a lawsuit about some small inaccuracies in Doer's movie. And that caused they could not put on the bottom of the slide. But
Pete, you have 10 minutes.
oh boy. All right, this concerns the wet bulb temperature, which is a combination of heat and humidity. If it goes up too high, which in fact it does a lot of times in places, you cannot cool yourself, and you have to get inside out of the heat, or it will kill you. But for updated to find out, as I already knew, but there's a lot more details. This keeps happening in a lot of different hot spots for some periods of time, not like lasting all summer, but times when the wet bulb temperature is too high. Okay, this just goes into more about that. Now, coming back here to the same question, can physics genetics in action? What? Back up. All the helpless little island nations out in the Pacific and other oceans are worried about sea level coming up, and what can they do? They seem to be helpless against the empire of fossil fuels. They've been inspired by Moana, the Moana movies. The Future lawsuit at Vanuatu, that's a small country way out in the South Pacific, got their nation to start a court case in international courts. And charging that all these fossil fuels are very dangerous and should be stopped. And guess what? 6 years later, the World Court issued an opinion saying, yes, this is a very serious step. It's an advisory opinion. Didn't find anyone guilty of a crime yet, but it indicates that if the nations of the world continue releasing as much of the gases from burning fossil fuels, they could very well be held guilty of a serious crime. Just a few days ago, President Trump canceled arbitrarily a big wind operation off the coast of the U.S. He had already canceled another one early this year. Of course, they had to have a lawsuit in order to uncancel. The one who was just canceled will probably get uncanceled as well. But this created so much interest in why it's in opposition to the wind energy that. It got interested in a report which was developed by Brown University, showing a whole lot about organizations pushing anti-wind energy propaganda, really. A whole lot of material, all the bit of connection. You know, lots of people you don't want to meet, even more different connections to them. And New York Times picked up the story. We'll say, actually, they're coming, top meeting in Belen in Brazil in November, just a few days from now. All of these things that had happened, they had already commissioned, because the host country for this meeting, Brazil, is the kind of country who would do this. They'd already commissioned a big report, an investigation on climate misinformation and disinformation. Now they have a tremendous amount of input to put into that. And I'm sure it will be quite a hot meeting there in Brazil. We've just had a big new critical review issued by our government on 140 pages saying that there's nothing much going on. This is going to be one particular scientist's rebuttal to the way they used his information. But as it turns out, I can't really tell you what he said. The reason being that it's like 5 pages. So, unfortunately, going through that new government report, one detail at a time, would go from 140 pages to probably 1,000 pages. So that's not the best way to do it. It turned out that this was a little bit of a surprise. I mean, I let you see who wrote it, and it was names of people you might not recognize him, but I recognize him from years back, doing the same sort of thing. The same people just keep on doing it. So my comment on that is, well, first of all, a lot of our government climate information data that we had on government websites was deleted and erased. Of course, people had made copies of it, knowing that there was some danger. And future research been canceled and so on. It seems to me that by canceling, erasing data and canceling further research, it's not what you would do if you were totally confident that the science is totally on your side. I mean, you would want more science if you really believe it's totally on your side. But then, of course, different humans have different human behavior. Now, just about to the end, what have you done for or against the climate problem personally? Personally, I haven't done much. And most of us here, if your income is about $40,000 a year, then on a global basis, you are part of the global wealthy people who are burning all the fossil fuels. The fossil fuels company continues selling to us as long as we all keep buying. And I'm sure a lot of people could go above 40,000. 60,000, 80,000, 100,000, which means just going through your daily life, you are burning a whole lot of fossil fuels. We just keep doing it. They'll sell it to us as long as we buy it. Well, I was going to put a nice quote. I was going to use Google Earth and get big pictures. We have so many subdivisions in the sun all around us with very few solar panels. I don't have a picture of that, but you can imagine that if you had solar panels all over the place, it would make a lot of difference. You wouldn't need to be burning some of the fossil fuels. Don't worry about this. The national electric bus in Uganda, just to make the point that all the different countries are aware of the climate problem, not just the famous countries. All right, time is short here. Denial of something that goes to first it's not happening, B, it's not at all. And then it would be too expensive to fix it if the absence of delay in getting anything done. So whatever company it is, keep on doing what they're doing. Well, actually, once you go into the whole presentation on, yes, what we can do, there's not much time. This is a big solar operation in Morocco. This is the type that use concentrated solar power with these things, and they heat up molten salt and get that very hot and use that to run a generator to produce power at night. Their deal is Morocco's right across the straits of Gibraltar from Spain, and the cable goes across there, and they can sell power to Europe. All right. Questions? Questions?
A lot of research being put in. Thank you for all the long look at information.
I have one question, Pete, and David.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna mention anything we talked about in the parking lot. It'll be something else. If any of you were at the League of Women Voters last meeting in Orange County, I did question the board, the school board, or what they're doing with solar. I got in a discussion with the chief of facilities, and they have taken down one solar array at Waterford Elementary School, but they are studying the feasibility of solar arrays, period. It's going to take time, because if you start approaching 10, 15 years on your rooftop systems, you're not going to find them, at least that generation, working that well. Also, your windmills, some countries are painting them different colors so the birds don't run into them. And there's all kinds of technologies out there overseas, not here. Because the oil companies have this country right where they want them, by the private parts.
Seems like it.
Got one question over here. Comment. Within the last 2 weeks, I think I saw in the newspaper that the horse-drawn carriages were going to be discontinued